Hi, this is Dr. Gary. We're going to speak with my good friend Paul today on addiction and how addiction affects our whole body, mental, physical, and spiritual, and where there's hope at the end of that. This is Paul, Chef Crumb.
Right,
We knew
correct.
each other. We met about 25 years ago.
About 25 years ago.
Years
Yeah.
ago. And then we got to know each other a little more from my little challenges that I had, with addiction,
Right.
with alcohol, having a problem back maybe over 17 years ago
Right.
is when I stopped drinking. But during that time, I had the challenges of trying to stop, and I couldn't do it on my own.
Right.
It was it just wasn't happening. Every time I tried to do it, something would come up, or emotionally, or something would happen
Right.
where I wouldn't. I would go back and drink again, and so that went on for a number of years.
It did, Gary. One of the things that I realized is if you really look at our actual meeting, it was in a spiritual situation, and a lot of people meet in those situations and they have those kind of tendencies, or their addictive personality, alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be. And what I see is that they're reaching out, hoping that that's going to make the change in their life, that their religious beliefs are. And I think that goes back to where people have that concept. I know I did, most people do, of we know that God can do anything, but we keep trying to put it on some type of moral issue. And I think when we first met, that was kind of where you were at, was that you were still looking at it as somewhat addiction as a moral issue, and not addiction as, hey, it's a lot more than just that. It's physical, it's emotional, it is spiritual, but it takes all those different things. And I think that's one of the places you came to that I begin to see the change in you.
Yeah, the idea of thinking that you could do it on your own and just put it down, it wasn't working.
Right.
And being able to be honest about the challenges, and
Right.
that was, I found that was other people's problem too. And today I would say that people are just as sick as their secrets.
No doubt about it, and I realized for me, a lot of what I was doing was I was trying to quote unquote heal thyself, but I wasn't equipped for it, and which just even added more to my self-centeredness, which for me was the absolute center of my addiction, to the point that I kept thinking that I was the one in control. Right. And yet I wasn't at all. I served a different higher power, and unfortunately it was drugs and alcohol. And then I realized that only by letting go and being willing to no longer be the manager of my life, things begin to change. And as they changed, then I noticed that, hey, I am not responsible any longer for my recovery. There are other aspects that are responsible for my recovery. All I'm here to do is participate. Right. And to move through this. And that's when I began to understand that this thing is absolutely emotional. It is a physical issue, and it by far is also a spiritual issue.
Right. And for people that have a challenge with drugs or alcohol, and then they're wanting, when they want to stop, first they got to want to.
No doubt.
Not everybody wants to stop.
No, their family does. Their family's real behind them stopping, and the employers and everybody else, and even the barkeeps and the dealer and everybody else is, but we're not.
And until it gets to a point that it is cramping their lifestyle, or something changes, like say maybe getting ready to lose a job or lose their wife, their family. It doesn't have to be that way.
No,
but that is a motivator, you might say,
absolutely,
for individuals, and that was a motivator for me,
right?
So so I can relate with that. As being a doctor and dealing with people today that wanting to stop using drugs or alcohol, that there is hope and there's a way to do it, and I believe you can't do it alone.
Right.
It just-
There's no doubt about that. And I think you nailed it right on right there when you said hope. I mean, that's such a big word. That's the biggest thing I think as alcoholics or addicts that we lose is we just lose our hope. It's interesting that there are different motivators to get us to a bottom, but yet the bottom always seems to be the same. It's where I've come to the realization after working with different people for over 30 years, they just get to a point where they just don't want to be. They don't want to die. They don't want to live. They just don't want to exist any longer. And you can't stop in the middle of life, even though people have a desire to.
Right. And there's a number of different ways have helped people to get sober.
Sure.
And but like I say, first that I found that and they got to want to, and they got to be willing and able and honest and open and to do those kinds of things. And that can be hard for an individual that's living with being the center of the universe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am the star of my show.
Right. If we're going to a funeral, I want to be the corpse.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
Going to the wedding,
I want to be all of it.
Right.
Because I am. It is all about me. And that's the biggest thing that I have dealt with time and time again is it's all about me. And the irony in that is that people feel like they're worthless. Right. And yet they want to be in control. That just never makes sense. That just shows how crazy this whole disease is. And that what we're waiting for is that moment of clarity to where all of a sudden we realize, oh my God, I'm just in trouble and I don't know what to do. And I don't know who to reach out to.
Right. You mentioned something about being worthless. Why do you think that so many people that use drugs or alcohol feel that worthlessness? Why do you think that is?
Oh, I think there's all kinds of reasons. I think that, but I think the biggest one is that they have just put themselves in a position where it's no longer a real view of life. All of a sudden, it's an inner perspective view of, I'm a failure. Due to whatever it may be, whether it may be the way they were raised, things that were said to them, or just the fact that a lot of times what you run into with people with addictive personalities, they're extremely intelligent but extremely emotional too. And that those two things sometimes we overthink. We have the ability to overthink our situations. And so there's an expectation of, I know how to do this, I can do this on my own, yet we fail. If I have an issue with my spine, I'm not going to go and try to deal with it myself. I'm going to go to you, or I'm going to go to somebody who knows what to do. But yet, how many times during our addiction have we tried to fix everything? And all we continue to do is just fail and fail and fail. So out of that failure, all of a sudden the shame and remorse begins to come up. So again, as I was saying before, we get to the point where we don't want to feel. We just don't want to be. Because it's amazing to me how most addicts, especially that I deal with, it's incredible how in their mind they're the biggest piece of junk that ever lived, but yet they're far superior to you or me, and they know everything about everything. Yet the truth is they're just scared. And that's the whole point, is that they're scared individuals that are not willing to take a look and realize that, hey, maybe life is better if I'm not the one in control.
Right. I find with a lot of the patients that we deal with that when you go back and look at history, that there's a lot of times there's pain. There's a pain issue in the individual's life, whether male or female, that existed. Somehow either pain from guilt or shame or abuse or not always.
Right.
Because a lot of people wound up finding they had a problem for using drugs and alcohol first starting out and just partying.
Right.
And then till the party began to not be fun anymore.
Right.
And but even with that, it's like feeling like you're bulletproof. And that this is never going to catch up with me, It's just the deception of self-deception is the worst deception.
Absolutely.
So to think that you can continue on down this path, this body can only take so much, and then it begins to break down, and then we have those problems that wind up bringing people to our office that wind up, whether it be a physical problem, a mental situation or emotional, like you just mentioned, those kinds of things that create a turning point in someone's life. And like I say, it doesn't have to be like that.
No.
But unfortunately, that's usually something of that sort that has brought someone to really want to change. Wouldn't you agree to that?
Absolutely. And how many times have you heard people state they'll have 2 or 3, 4 years sobriety, and they'll sit there and they'll say, I never thought I would get to this point in my life. I never thought I would live to be this age, because it's all about it's now. It's all about now. I don't mind what happens in the future. I don't care about what the price is, because in my mind, there is no price. I'm just all about now, and what I feel. And so in that self-centeredness and in that point, when we begin to live like that, we start affecting everyone else's life. Yet we feel like the victim. And I'm sure you've seen that over and over again.
Right. It's when all the damage is around an individual and they feel okay, but the ripple effect that affects the family, everybody in the family, and their job, and every area of their relationships that that they're involved in. Why do you think that you mentioned sobriety and people in sobriety and having time in that? Why do you think they go back? Why do you think they have a slip or go back?
It's easy. That is the easiest question you could have asked today, and we've talked about this before. Obviously, the way that we get sober is physical first. We stop using. Second thing is we start dealing with our emotional issues. So we start getting to the point where we say, you know what, I need to grow. And we take on this attitude of it's not all about me any longer, but the only way I can grow is to make it about my growth. And people do that. And then they get to a point in that they go, you know what, I'm missing something here. I've got this aspect. So there must be something greater than myself. And of course, that's the spiritual life. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, it's the most natural thing to want to look for God, But then what I see people getting better. Life gets better. All of a sudden they got a family. They have a little bit of money in the bank. They've got a new car, a mortgage. They've got all those things that either they lost in the past or never had before. And the first thing that kind of slides is, well, I go to church once a week. That's pretty good. I don't need to be on a daily basis, a spiritual daily basis with God anymore. And I see their prayer life, because I ask people, what happened to you? When did you stop praying? And that's the first thing they tell me. Well, I kind of disconnected a little bit, or they will end up with a resentment against somebody, and so they don't want to deal with that, and that means that they have to go to God with that, and they don't want to do that. And then all of a sudden, the emotional stuff begins to happen, and they say, well, I can't believe the way this person treats me or that person treats me. Look what all I have done. Oh gosh, there goes self-centeredness again. So here comes self-centeredness. It slides in. And then we finally get to the point where we say, you know what? I can deal with this. If I have a drink, who cares? I'm good. Because where they're at, it's all about them again. The complete self-centeredness cycle is taken over again. God is no longer a part of that. What do we say? Ego, easing God out. Ego is the number one killer for people with addictive behaviors. And the other thing is, as we've talked about before too, is resentments. All of a sudden, if I don't have a good spiritual life, I'm going to be offended. And I'm going to go pick up an offense. And I can't afford to do that. Because again, that takes me out of my relationship with God and puts me in a relationship again with me, and I'm it. And as my self-centeredness comes, guess what begins to happen? I do the same thing. I disconnect from my family. I disconnect from my friends. And I'm offended, and then I'm high.
Right. You mentioned the spiritual component there. We're made up of physical, mental, and spiritual. And so for an individual, the way we look at it, the way I look at it from the standpoint of a doctor, we got to be whole, mind, body, and spirit.
Right.
Now, we have people that say, okay, I'm good. My physical body's good and my thought process is good.
Right.
I don't know what good is. I think sometimes it's overrated. It's like what are you choosing? But then what do you say to someone that says, this spiritual aspect, I don't really want to deal, I'm not dealing with that.
It's interesting because you are dealing with that, and whether you want to or not. See, I love the fact that people become open to something. Give me an agnostic, man. That's awesome. By the way, you know what I really think most agnostics are? Just pissed off at God, right? They had a relationship and something happened. And so in that hurt, remember we talked originally about some hurt and pain and those kind of things that help lead to addiction? Well, it's the same cycle again. So at least if somebody's willing to say, you know what, I'm willing to just relook at this. That's great, because what I have learned is that God meets me right where I'm at. And so what begins that I see evolve is an acceptance of I'm not God, and there probably is something bigger and better. And from that, I start watching people begin to have a relationship. Whether that's, I've seen people pray to not knowing what they're praying to, but they're willing. And the most amazing thing I have found, at least in my walk with God, is the fact that He's willing to pick me up and meet me where I'm at and bring me along and woo me to where I need to be, And I feel for people who just aren't willing to let go and truly let go and let God come in and just do a work within them.
The idea of letting go is as long as you're trying to control everything, it just doesn't seem to work out. It didn't work out for me. Then I've realized that was one of the reasons why I wasn't getting sober over the period of time that I did. Is that willingness, like you said, even in our practice, someone's got to be willing to follow a plan or protocol.
Right.
They got to be willing and open and willing and be receptive to be able to get better. See, there's hope. So it goes back to hope. You brought up something about like with pain. In that pain that takes place, a lot of people think about pain being physical pain.
Yes.
So there's, in addition to the physical pain, there's mental pain, and then there's no pain spiritually,
right?
Because we're dealing with senses now, which is in the physical body. So it's amazing that today we have an epidemic in our society with opiates around pain.
Right.
It started out with pain medication.
Exactly.
That was also told to the doctors that this is not an addictive medication, which we found out that it was.
Very much so.
And so we have this epidemic now of opiates in our society, and people, now what do we do? What do we do? We have pain. How are we going to deal with it? So back when I got sober, there wasn't the type of program that I have in our practice today.
Right.
We dealt with it, and the idea of pain and the physical pain, the mental anxiety or the mental pain that took place there. What if you could be able to ease that pain, create a more diminished type of setting, so that you could grasp some of these things we've talked about to help an individual become to achieve sobriety? Was a great thing. That's what took us down this journey with dealing the program that we have today. So for an individual to be able to, because a lot of people with fear and with in addiction, they're afraid to get sober for the
no doubt
pain.
about it. Yes, right. The emotional pain as much as the physical pain.
Right, exactly. Right. Because the fear of the withdrawals are going to be so bad that I'll just keep using.
Right.
And in several drugs, it's that way. Even with alcohol.
Sure,
waking up with someone that's having, to the point of having DTs, wanting the need to drink or wanting to do from the pain, feeling not wanting to go through pain. So as human beings, we don't like pain.
Right.
And so we'll do whatever. It may even be to start out using drugs and alcohol to ease the pain, which winds up being a problem. So this pain issue is big, and be able to ease the pain, or for someone to be willing to even go down the journey that, to get sober is not going to be as painful as you think, or the detox that you're going to go through is not going to be as bad as you've been told.
Right.
So there's a lot of fear wrapped up, wouldn't you say, with
Oh,
the ideas of like detox and things like that?
Sure, absolutely. It's funny. We have these visions of the old school. You're in a straight jacket, and you're seeing bugs and all this kind of stuff. And of course, that's so far from what reality is. But you touched on something I just wanted to kind of jump on for a second, and that's the fact that we have so many people who start off in physical pain and they begin to take opioids, and it gets to the point where what they begin to find out is, hey, not only am I not feeling pain anymore, I don't feel so bad about myself either. And so all of a sudden those opioids begin to take not just the physical pain, but also the emotional pain. Don't you find it kind of interesting that, for instance, bipolar has just skyrocketed off the charts? It was never hardly looked at 20 years ago, but yet people are looking at dual addiction. Now you have dual diagnosis all the time. And I think that's very apropos in the fact that people are looking at both. They're looking at, hey, I hurt my back. I started taking this pill, which made me feel good. But not only did it make me feel good, it made me feel like somebody. I don't have any fear. Because when I first started drinking, that's exactly what I felt. I could take a drink and it'd be like, I'm King Kong, man. I'm ready to go. And I believe that the two together are beginning to almost cause one against the other. And I think that's why, for instance, in the protocol that you do, you're able to remove half of that, which just gives a much better a chance of somebody actually getting this and being successful. Because then, yes, are they dealing with the emotional pain? Sure they are. But they're in a place where they can deal with the emotional pain without having to deal with all the other addictive aspects that they've had to deal with, or as an answer. It's no longer an answer if it's not a compulsion.
Right. Being able to have someone that's willing to go that journey to stop, or have gotten to the point that they want to stop using drugs or alcohol, and being able to begin our program with it'll begin to detox and find that it's not as bad as they thought. That's a win to begin with, for them to their detox not to be as bad. It's still going to be difficult for them, but not near as bad as they thought in many instances. And so to be able to do that and then just start having clarity of mind, and then the window can open up in their mind to be able to receive some of these ideas and plans of action to change these behaviors that got them in the road or into the direction that they went in the first place to use. Right. So it's really great to be able to see today. I wish the program that we're using in our office today was around when I wanted to get sober.
Absolutely.
It's a wonderful thing to be able to get to the point in a short period of time to have those withdrawals go away, and to have a clarity of mind, and be able to move on with your life.
And watch and be able to watch the light pop back on.
Right.
All of a sudden the eyes brighten back up and people begin to see things that they haven't seen before. Like their family and how much people care, and just the fact that they can do this in such a way. Yeah, is it easy to detox? Never. I don't care what situation you are, but is it made in such a way that we're talking about some fatigue and a little bit of discomfort and that kind of thing. But yet, the big thing is it gives someone the opportunity to go ahead and move through the type of withdrawal that used to take a month or 2 months or 3 months, and just be able to watch that go away in a period of time that's reasonable, that works in such a way that they're able to move forward in their recovery.
Right. And then start having hope again.
Oh, hope restored, man. Right. It's unbelievable. I've talked to some people that have gone through the protocol, and to watch their hope and sit there and know that, I've tried different things over and over and over again, but this time I feel like I'm in a position of strength, not weakness. What a great place to be.
Yes, it's wonderful. You can get your life back.
Right.
And start living life instead of having that feeling of despair.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I mean, what do you have to lose? Really, that's always, one thing that an alcoholic and an addict always look at is what's the angle, right? What's in it for me? Well, what is in it for you? What are you going to lose by taking an attempt to do something that puts you in a position to get your life back? Because if you don't like it, guess what? You can go back to what you were doing before. You already know what the results is for that. Why don't you try something new, something where you're not 100% what the results may be, but it's going to be better than what you were in.
Right. And a lot of times the things that keep people from that is fear.
Absolutely.
The
Fear's
fear.
the biggest thing. Right.
Yeah.
One of the things we do when we get sober is we begin to look at different parts of our life and what were motivators in our life. And of course, the biggest thing, when I inventory those things, the one thing that comes up consistently is fear. Still today, 30-something years later, still fear. But the difference is I can have fear and not be controlled by fear. And know it's just a part of life, and that it's okay, and that I'm going to be okay, and that we're going to get through this.
Did you at some point in your life have where you had to drink every day?
Sure, and it was early.
Tell a little bit about that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I started drinking. It's a little bit funny, right? So I went to a private school that had a very large Jewish community inside of it, and so all of a sudden I learned all about bat mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs, right? And really, what that meant was it was time to drink. Okay, so here I go as a 12 and 13-year-old guy, and I'm hitting these weekends and I'm drinking. But what I noticed was I could go talk to any girl in there, it was no problem, or I could do whatever. And unfortunately for me, that didn't stay that way very long. By the time I was 15 years old, I was drinking weekly, multiple times. And by the time I was 16, I was putting beers under my seat in my cars because in the mornings I had a little bit of shake. And I knew that if I could pop a beer and drink it in the morning time, at least I could get myself halfway together. And from that, it got to the point where I was drinking Sprite all the time. And of course, it wasn't really Sprite, but it's the only way in high school. Think about that, in high school, that I could drink during the day. So was it daily? Absolutely. And then the interesting thing that I found out was for every alcohol or drug out there, there's another drug that'll help you. And so all of a sudden, I had found that I'd been put on Ritalin. And so I started finding out that if I ate 5 Ritalin a day instead of 1, I could do anything, and I could continue to drink and be okay. And so I did that. But it got to a point where, for me, before I never had a legal drink, as you know, because I got to the point where not only could I not control it anymore, it was causing medical issues. And I mean, like things such as I was beginning to, my skin tone was starting to change. I was getting gray. I mean, I literally would sweat the speed out in the mornings. I'd had alcohol poisoning before I was 17 years old. So those things, I had been picked up driving down in Florida on US 1 the wrong way, at 2 o'clock in the morning. Don't remember any of it to this day. And the blackout started happening. And so it got to the point where only by God's grace, I knew that I had a problem and I didn't want to live like this any longer. And so what I prayed, I actually got on my knees and I prayed, and I was like, God, if you can do anything, do it. And a friend of mine had been in rehab for 7 months, and I went to go pick him up, ironically enough, for a church retreat. And when I picked him up, I cleaned out my car. I was like, no drugs, no alcohol, nothing. And as we got about 10 miles down the road, all of a sudden he looked at me and said, I got something for you. And my heart broke because I knew what it was. And sure enough, he pulled out a bottle of vodka, the big one, the handle. And the problem with that was, for the first time in my life, I didn't want to drink, but I had to. I mean, I had no choice. There was no choice in it. And as I began to drink that, I would get so upset. We were out in the woods, and I would throw it out in the woods. And literally 5 minutes later, I was on my hands and knees looking for that bottle and praying, please, God, don't let me do this. And yet I did. And I did. And I did till there was nothing left. And I went into detox that night. And that was the beginning of the road. It was a long road, but it was the beginning. And I had that moment of clarity that we hear about, where all of a sudden I realized that I'm probably going to die if I continue to live like this. And there was a little bit of hope in me that said, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I really want to live. And when that happened, I think at that moment, it wasn't like I had this God moment where all of a sudden my life changed, but it started. And I wanted a little more, and I wanted a little more. And I began to work certain principles in my life that began to change and shape my life in such a way that now alcohol and drugs are the farthest thing from even a thought or anything that I'd want to. Today, if I have a problem and I'm hurting, I go to God or I go to other people. I have a network, a small network of people, yourself included, that I go to, and I'm able to say, I'm going through a difficult time, and share it with you and move on, instead of saying, I got to do all this on my own. I got to make it happen. I got to be the center of my universe because I'm responsible for me. And the only thing I'm responsible to do is get up, thank God for what I got, and be willing to listen to others and be willing to help others. That's it. That's all I got to do.
Right. And you said something about dealing with other people and having accountability, being able to talk to someone else and be honest and be open. That's where that transparency it works, and that honesty, and you stay sober from
Right.
that. Learning how to live life and enjoy life. That
Absolutely.
life is worth living. I think a lot of people think that God, take this away from me. He gave us free will.
Right.
So it's up to the individual can
Right.
pick back up again. It's like God's willing. Are you willing? Is the question.
Right.
Are you willing
Right.
to follow through with what you're going to do? And so that willingness and openness is so important. And being able to today, what we're able to do in our office, we get the opportunity to help people with this pain,
Yes.
different issues. And also help them from the standpoint of help them get rid of their craving, get rid of their go through their withdrawals, and then have hope again.
Absolutely.
And watch that window open up for their lives to make the right decisions and move forward and live productive life and live life free.
Absolutely. And live life in such a way that even when life isn't going along just perfectly, it's okay. Because it's going to get better.
Right.
There's always that hope. It's going to get better. But you got to start.
You got to start somewhere.
You got to start. And
Right.
just if nothing else, if you're just willing, just a little bit of willingness to start, it's amazing what'll happen and how your whole life and future will open up. It's not all great roses and perfect gardens and things. No, but it's living life to its fullest, the way it was meant and intended to be.
Right.